The fearless, curious soul. Goldilocks Productions presents The Deep Reading. Connecting you to your soul show.
This is Suzanne Wyman, the Deep Psychic. Welcome, and thank you for joining me today. Please think about the commentary that you relate to. I want you to feel included and know that if this conversation resonates to who and what you are, then you are part of something greater than yourself. The universe is connecting to you and answering your questions. But seriously today, thank you so much for joining me. I'm really looking forward to today's conversation. I have a really dear friend who's joining me, and John and I have known each other for a really long time, but we live far apart, so I don't get a chance to see John, so even having a conversation with John is like a special gift for me. So I'm going to bring John on, and I'm going to let John introduce himself. He's an incredibly gifted speaker, and he's a pleasure for me to join in with. And I hope that you get a lot out of the conversation in listening to John. All right, let's see what John is, and let's see if we can bring him on.
Hi, I'm John Schobring. Yes, can you hear me?
I can hear you perfectly. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
All right. So, John, introduce yourself.
Okay. So, I'm currently a special education teacher in Oakland. Before that, though, I spent about 25 years in information technology as a computer programmer, a systems analyst, and a management consultant, which was what I was doing when our story sort of begins.
So first of all, John, thank you for coming on and sharing your story and having this conversation with me. You really are somebody who is a gifted speaker. Would you like to share with our listening audience today what you got your degree in? Because not many people understand what that degree is about.
Well, I got my degree, my undergraduate degree, from UC Berkeley in the subject of rhetoric, which is has to do it used to be the speech department, then they became the rhetoric department because they changed their emphasis to a more analytic bent. So they sort of de-emphasized the speaking and emphasized the analytical quality of discourse. It's a good undergraduate degree for lawyers and such.
Okay. So at one time, there was considered only 4 professions that a gentleman could say that he had, and one was a lawyer, one was a person who had a degree in rhetoric, I think the other one was religious or ministerial work. I can't remember.
Yeah, soldier and priest. That was about it.
Really? Okay, that was it.
Yeah, soldier, priest, rhetorician, and rich person, I guess. Well, I guess they all were rich people. So anyhow, not too many. Yeah, rhetoric goes, the tradition of rhetoric goes all the way back to Aristotle.
Okay. So, I mean, a lot of people don't even really understand that was a profession, and I don't even think very many colleges today offer that degree. But it makes you a fabulous speaker, and it makes you a great storyteller. So tell the story about that simple decision that you made and what happened when you entered into that journey. Because it is a great story. It's a simple decision, but it's a good story.
Yeah, really the central point is that my life sort of grew organically. There was no lightning strikes or anything like that. It's just simply a series of small decisions, small twists and turns, and for me winding up where I am. But this one particular decision actually leads directly to the conversation we're having right now.
Yes.
And that was that once I settled into kind of a career, I spent 6 or 7 years trying to get an MBA, a Master's of Business Administration, and it was miserable. I didn't like any of the classes. It was all because I wanted to make more money. And so after 6 or 7 years of this, I made up my mind. I finished it was a class on auditing. It was just typically awful. And I swore to myself that was it. No more. From that point on, I was going to only take classes that I thought I would enjoy. So I looked into one of those newspapers, at least they used to have, in the Bay Area for alternative education classes, and I leafed through it, and there was a class in acupressure. So that sounded interesting. It had to do with Chinese medicine. I knew a little bit about that, and so I signed up and started going to this class in acupressure. So, and I enjoyed it, and in fact, I wound up getting certified as a massage therapist in acupressure. And also, while I was taking the classes, one of the classes I took was in shiatsu, and that led to ongoing massages with this guy who was a very, very good. He had studied in Japan, and so he became my massage therapist for a long time, which also led to meeting my other therapist, because the two of them had conjured up this idea that's actually a pretty good idea, that after having a massage, then they would go in to see this therapist. And so through him, I met my therapist, who became my therapist for, well, over 10 years. So those are some of the other things that happened, but that's not even my story. Those are just side information.
I love it, John. I love it. Yeah. Okay.
So you know what? But so here back to the main thread of the story. While I was waiting for one of the acupressure classes one day, I was sitting in the lobby. I didn't have anything to do, and there was this New Age newspaper sitting on the table, and so I picked it up and I was leafing through that. And in that newspaper, there was an ad for a Sunday afternoon hand reading with Richard Unger. And so, hand reading. So let me step back a second again. This wasn't completely out of the blue. When I was about 19, there was an occasion when my friends and I all went down to Santa Monica Pier. And, by the way, I grew up in L.A., although I live in the Bay Area now. So we were down at Santa Monica Pier one fine night, and just, wandering through the pier, and there was a hand reader there, and I was drawn to it. Nobody else cared. They were just like, oh, yeah, okay, and they were moving on. I was transfixed. But I don't know how much she was charging, but for whatever it was too much for me. I was just 19. Whatever it was too much money. So I just kind of let that go. Then when I was about 28 or 29, I was at a Christmas fair in San Francisco, and there was another hand reader there. And this time, well, I could afford it. Although, he said, this guy says, just donation. It's whatever you want to pay. Which, in my experience, is probably a pretty good way to entice people, because, some people aren't going to listen, but those that do are going to pay an appropriate price. So I sat down with this guy, and he was good. he hit on some significant stuff, and he talked about a relationship which it had just happened like 2 weeks before, and the people I were with just burst out laughing because this guy described it to a T, and he was good. So I paid him appropriately,
Nice.
So I've had an innate interest in hand reading for most of my adult life, and I don't know where that comes from. I'm not drawn to tarot or any number of other things the way I am to hand reading. It just seems to be a natural, inbred thing. I don't know where it comes from, but there it is. So I see this ad in the newspaper, bringing us back into the thread again. This New Age newspaper, Sunday afternoon, this coming Sunday afternoon, Richard Unger is giving an afternoon seminar. And I thought, okay, this is interesting. Well, and once again, I'm only doing things that I might enjoy, so off I go. I go to this afternoon hand reading thing. And Richard Unger's main thing is life purpose through fingerprints. Yeah. So it was, the afternoon was basically fingerprint analysis, nothing to do really with the lines in the hand or anything like that. But once again, he was, he's good. Yeah. Richard Unger is good. Let me say that right now. I was very impressed, and we did the thing. And by the way, my life purpose is service. So just so what is it? The life purpose is service, love, and two others. I didn't prepare that part. Anyhow, at the end of this afternoon thing, he said, "Oh, by the way, next weekend we're having a weekend intensive in hand reading." And I thought to myself, well, I like this. It seems to appeal to me. I'll sign up for that too. So the following weekend I went to a weekend intensive, which does cover the whole gamut of hand shape, fingers, lines, and fingerprints again.
Right.
And at the end of that weekend intensive, he says, and by the way, we're going to be starting a 1-year program in a couple of months. And I thought to myself, this seems to speak to me. So I went all in and attended his 1-year intensive. So toward the end of the year, the class, we all start doing things, we rented a space at the Ren Fair, and we went to other New Age things to perform hand reading, which leads me to where Suzanne and I met, because also at some point along this way, I'm not sure exactly where, but I also became acquainted with J. Owen Swift, another
right.
was a very good handwriting. He's died, but his system was really quite different from Richard Unger's. He incorporated astrology and tarot into hand reading, which made it all the more interesting to me. So there was that, and which leads us finally to the New Age thing in San Jose, where I met Suzanne, and we immediately hit it off. And I'm not sure where to go with this story now.
John, it's a great story. But the funny part of it is that I had a little tiny booth, and you were with a group of other people that were doing hand analysis, and they were doing their readings. And so I came over and I introduced myself to your group, and I just remember, because of time, I was reading feet. And my grandmother had taught me how to read feet, and I was reading feet. And I came over, and I remember you sitting there and you just looking at me like, reading feet? Oh, no. And it was Northern California is by far more receptive to the psychic experience, all of the energy that goes with that, and always has been more receptive to that sort of environment than Southern California. I think it's so funny. You've never told me the story about seeing the woman who had the shop on the Santa Monica Pier, because I totally remember that spot. I lived in Santa Monica, so I think that's just like humorous. I mean, she had this little tiny shop, and
I remember it. I remember it as it was like a temporary building or something, wasn't it? I mean, it wasn't a permanent. It was just like a trailer, kind of. I mean, that's the way my memory of it, anyway. So it was almost in a science fiction story, it would have. The next day I would have come back and it would have disappeared or something like that.
Right. Exactly. It was like that. So there we are. We're in San Jose. I've set up a little teeny tiny booth, and you're there, and I'm living in Southern California, and I'm working in Northern California, and I'm working on the phone, and you give me this look, and I introduce myself, and I go back, and I'm all finished with it. I'm all finished. I've gone by and said hello. And then just a few hours later, John, you come over and you tell me how I did a reading for this woman, and she tells you that you're telling her the same thing based on what I saw in her feet. And that was it. You were convinced.
Well, sure. But, I've been thinking about this since we spoke yesterday.
Uh-huh.
And, one of the great conflicts in my life is the contest between the logic and the intuitive. And it's what kind of prevents me from doing this more than I do, because there's this ongoing skepticism I have unless I have some kind of proof. So, I may be, as intuitive as can be, but it lives, it isn't a comfortable, it's kind of a dichotomy. It isn't comfortable for me to live with this intuitive power. So, I had to have somebody, okay, so this person, we agree, saw the same things. Okay, now with that logical connection, I can, now we'll move on. I can, I talk to you and I feel like I've been verified somehow, had some kind of verification.
Right, the two pieces, because truthfully, in all the time that I've been involved in studying, educating, training, and providing education and training and everything else, the only people that really I've been able to really teach how reading feet works is people that understand palmistry. So it is kind of an interesting piece. So you and I sit down and we talk, and remember we're at a convention, and you and I sit down, and I don't know, did we talk for 3 hours? I don't remember if it was 2 or 3 hours.
Yeah, it took a long time.
Yeah. And I do a past life regression on you there.
Did we do that? I've been thinking about that too. Was it that time, or was it when we worked together later on?
No, it was that first time we met.
Okay, all right.
Yeah. So that
Okay, then. Yes, I remember. But I remember the regression. Yes, indeed.
Yeah. So we do that, and then and then that's it. You go back, and I go back to work, and that's how we meet each other, and then we go forward, and we set up different situations because we want to work together, because you want to see the tie between what's in the palms and how that shows up in the feet. So the feet are holders of chronic information. They tell us the story of your health. They tell you the story of ongoing conditions. They tell you how you process your emotions. They tell you how you feel about luxuries. And from the time you're born till the day you die, you can be identified with your footprint. So we footprint a baby, and your footprint changes so little that the day comes that you die, we can identify who you are based on the print that was taken of your foot when you were born. I always think that's an interesting piece of trivia. Whereas hands are the holders of acute information, and so, it's a very different process. But the overlaps and the pieces that, you see in the feet, you see in the palms, and on it goes like layers. So you and I begin this conversation, and we discover that, it's fun to look at somebody's hands or their feet and talk about the person as if they're not there.
Yes.
So we really, I really wish that we had more time and more opportunity to do that sort of thing, because it was so much fun. But with me to present the process of complete intuition, and you having to present the logic. And I understand the logical mind. My father was an inventor and a chemist, and scientists, it's about logical results that can be reproduced again and again, and they're accurate. And so your mind goes to that process, and I get that. I totally get that. And when somebody does that part of the work, I'm totally free to do the completely intuitive work. And and then, of course, every now and then, we would sit down with somebody, and we would talk to them, and all of a sudden you would look up at me, and you'd just be like, that's not in there. Where are you getting that from? So,
yes.
Where'd you get that, Suzanne? And you would always look at me like, no, now you've jumped off. You're not in the land of analyzing a palm. You're in the land of intuition and psychic stuff. But then you would see the look on the person's face, and they were just rapt. They were just like, they went into this state of rapture. So you have one story that I really like, where we encounter my love of babies. My love of babies has not changed. It's just, I don't have access to children like I used to, and I really do love babies. So this one is a good story. Share it, John, please.
Okay. So we were at a New Age fair in San Francisco, and it had either, I don't remember if it was Richard Unger or J.O. Swift had talked about this particular line in the hand, which, once again, after speaking with you yesterday, I've been thinking about it, and it had something to do with, like you said, the parent's treatment of the child, not something that was wrong with the child. It was child. And I wish, I can't remember what the line meant or anything or where it was, but it was up. It was one of those things that we had just recently discussed. And we had talked about it ourselves. And here comes this baby. We look at the hands, and there is that line. And the two, Suzanne and I, saw it at the same time, kind of gasped, looked each other in the eye. And the mother, of course, picks up on this. And so what do you see? What do you see? And my inclination, of course, is to be blunt and tell her exactly what the line is. which diplomatically was just not the thing to do. And Suzanne presented it. It was masterful in told the mother exactly what it meant, but in a very, very soft way that the mother could accept without feeling cornered or being accused of something or anything like that. So, yeah, my inclination to be, it's the only way I can, the way I work, I can't be diplomatic. Just from my upbringing, being diplomatic doesn't work for me. I feel that my feeling is that I have to be straightforward and unvarnished, which I recognize is not always the wisest course of action. So yeah.
I don't know if it necessarily reflects wisdom. I think that the message, there are people that are drawn to that. They want the complete and unvarnished truth, and they want it told to them in a very simple, straightforward way. But the difference is that if you're working in public, a lot of hours, a lot of people are very afraid of talking to somebody who's intuitive. So
yeah,
it's just the way it is. So you and I once again go to work at another event, and we're working. And this one had to be in San Francisco. I don't remember the exact location, but I know it had to be San Francisco. So we're doing readings there, and I come in and I get to the booth. And when I get to the booth, I said, on my way in, I encountered 3 simian creases. And
yeah.
Okay, and John, tell them what you said.
I said, no, that's impossible. It's just too rare. You don't come across 3 simians in the same day. It just isn't done.
It isn't done. Yeah. So I had stopped and gotten a cup of coffee, and I had gotten a pastry, and it was all in the convention hall. And so I took you back through, and I go, yeah, do you remember me? We talked earlier, and the person looks at me, and they go, yeah, I remember. I go, this is another person who's a hand reader. Would you please hold your hands up and show them your palms? And then the person does, and then you look at me and you go, I just don't believe it. Okay, so then we go to the next one and the next one. So anyway, we find these 3 people, and then that's when you and I decide that I am a magnet for people that have simian creases.
It's an interesting thing. It's almost like opposites attracting, because the simian is the most analytical, detached kind of thinker. They're just kind of detached, and of course, you, Suzanne, are very much emotionally integrated. So it's kind of we hope. Yeah, that's right. So it is kind of like opposites attracting. And, by the way, and I remember something else talking about people wanting to, that sometimes blunt language is good and other times people aren't ready for that. When I read at the Ren Fair, my first, when I was still just completing the 1-year program, this couple comes up to me. Well, it was a family, actually. There was a child as well. Anyhow, the husband, or they both the husband and wife wanted readings. I said, okay, great. Whoever wants to sit down first, sit down first. So the guy sits down, and it was for me at least, this particular guy was an easy read. He had earth hands, so real simple, not a lot of lines, and the lines he did have were pronounced. I mean, long, which is quite. You just don't see that. It's usually just a big, meaty hand with a couple of short lines. This guy had big, meaty hands, but some really long lines. So the reading went really smoothly, and I rambled on and on and on and on. And no, he's an earth guy, so he's not making any kind of, whether I'm right or wrong or in between, he's not giving me anything. He's just sitting there, poker face.
Right.
And I'm not paying attention to anybody else. I'm just, I'm focused on his hands, and the guy isn't giving me any feedback really. So I don't know whether I was right or wrong, but I finish, and both the husband and I, again, one of these things, dual, we both look at the wife at exactly the same time. It's okay, your turn. And she jumps back as if she's seen a ghost and says, I'm not doing this. No. Oh, no. And the guy and I look at each other, it's like, what the fuck? And, but it was I don't know. I didn't say anything bad to the guy or anything like that, but apparently, whatever my language was, she found it a little too unvarnished for her tastes, I guess.
Wow.
And, but, the good news is, so the bad news is I lost a sale, but the good news is I really felt validated that, well, I just must be onto something here. So, yes.
Talk about, so the simian crease, the simian marking on the hand, by the numbers, it's 1 in 100,000 has a double simian crease. 1 in 10,000.
Is it really? I wouldn't, if you say so. I don't remember what the statistics are exactly. And especially since you've been finding them everywhere, I begin to wonder, geez, maybe it's like 1 in 2. I don't know.
Yeah, that is weird.
But it's a fairly rare line.
Yes.
And to have them up both hands is doubly, it's just doubly rare. It just really doesn't happen.
So talk
but
about
you seem to. Oh, it's very analytical. Let me think. The example that Richard Unger used to give was that a guy with simian lines in a relationship is going to if he's feeling like he's drawing closer to his partner, will present to the partner saying, I believe it's time for us to move to the next level. Something completely, almost a parody of trying to relate emotionally without the emotion. So that the people with simians can be quite socially awkward. But they're highly analytical. That they're very, in the world of analysis, the simians, they're at the top of the heap.
So I always say when I see a simian crease that you're an individual who is capable of acts of genius, but your great struggle is finding placement and belonging. Because simians tend to create an opportunity of genius that nobody else has ever done. So they struggle, emotionally and mentally in their 20s and 30s, and it usually isn't until their 40s or 50s that they find their place where they really belong, they find acceptance, and they separate their emotions from themselves. So their emotional process is like over here in the other corner of the room, and then there's them, and then there's the logic and analysis. So dealing with a simian is always difficult because they don't want to acknowledge their emotions. Yes.
See, you've had lots of practice talking to these people. It's been I'm not in the mix like you anymore. So what you said is this all sounds. You're right. You said it much better than I could.
Oh well, John, it's easily corrected. We just just like the chair together, and all of this will come flooding back to you.
You're right.
Yeah, it's just Rich has a modified simian crease because I really love the story of a simian. A simian child to raise is just really a lot of work for a family, parents in particular, because they want one toy. They want to eat their food one thing at a time.
Yeah, right.
They like to do one thing, and life isn't like
yeah,
that.
Richard.
Go ahead.
Yeah, Richard Unger used to say that you got a plate in front of you. You eat all your peas, then you eat all your mashed potatoes, then you eat your main course.
Yeah.
It's all focusing on one thing at a time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's not much fun for parents to raise a child like this because they don't, if they have other children or they have something else to do, they're not really so concerned with, obviously people that are really into children and have a lot of time and creativity and resources are going to nurture this. But Rich's hand has a modified simian crease, and I forever tell him, it's your parents, they broke it. But that's not very nice. But it brings us back to the story of the baby, and I do remember that perfect moment with the two of us bent over, looking down at this baby's little palm. It must have been about 14 months old. It was in the stroller.
Yeah.
You and I are bent over this tiny little infant, and we're like, oh, let me take a look at your hand. By the way, children are not willing to share the information of their feet and palms.
No, they are not.
They kick up this
Most deaf.
Yeah. They know the value of it. Intuitively, the little babies know this value. So we open up the baby's hand, and we look in there, and at the same moment, you and I look up at each other, straight in each other's eyes, like about a matter of, 3.5 to 4 inches from one another, and we're like, oh, no. Oh, no. And it's like, oh, no, the mother did it. She ruined it. So, no parent. Parents make mistakes because that's life. But no parent wants to hear that they really missed it. So it is a tough dialogue. But I think the marking, if I remember correctly, had to do with the fact that the child was born with this beautiful line of clear communication from inside itself to outward expression, and through this negative chatter in the home, that line had been taken and formed into broken pieces in a really short period of time. So we knew it was quite serious. So it was really kind of an interesting process. So here's a tie in the thinking. Richard Unger became involved. What is that institute in Switzerland? He became involved in a project of taking and documenting the prints of the hand and the fingerprints and the
well, he was. Print. Yeah, he. Well, that was always his thing, taking and documenting handprints and fingerprints, because this whole thing of life purpose in the fingerprints is, once again, his main thing, and his vision, he felt his purpose was to establish make hand reading legitimate, basically, to bring it into the workaday world. So basically, this thing in Switzerland was basically him branching out into Europe with his Institute of Hand Analysis, and that's so now he's international. He's established this school here, and he's got branches in Europe, and there's some kind of deal in Switzerland. I don't follow it, but
I was up there in Northern California, and I talked to him one time, and he was they were collecting palm prints and fingerprints of people that were criminals, and they were taking and trying to come up with some sort of analysis, because your feet, your toes and your feet and everything else have the same print process. So, but what was interesting is that Richard, what's he going to talk about with Richard Unger? Richard Unger is somebody who really understands the process of logic and analysis, and he's
got a simian.
Yeah, he does. Huh.
Yeah.
Well,
just as a side note.
That's something I don't remember. I did a reading for him, I think, in 1990, and I've had some conversations with him, and he's always been, no matter when I've called him, he's always taken my phone call. He's always talked to me. He's always shared information with me. He's been absolutely wonderful. He really has. So, but talking about working together as two very different people, that is the most fun for me. It is really, really fun because you stay in the place of logic and analysis and wanting irrefutable proof and looking at the evidence, only at the evidence. And, I'm much more comfortable with moving into my intuition. So one of the things that, I did not, until you said that to me, until you said a simian crease is exactly opposite of myself, I really didn't understand what the lesson was to learn, because for a long period of time, it just seemed like everywhere I went, I had a simian crease, and I was like, "What is up with this? This is way off the scale. This is ridiculous." So then the story that emerged was the headline lifeline disconnect, and I would say that I see more headline lifeline disconnects. It just doesn't make any sense. And so that's the individual who, and so you and I have a different opinion on that. Did you know that the headline lifeline disconnect is the only concept in the 3 schools of palmistry that they agree upon? There's 3 schools of palmistry. There's Indian, there's Chinese, and Western, and they disagree on every single thing except for that. So, So, just between you and I, just having some fun here on this talk show, and I'm enjoying your company enormously. I am sort of reluctant to do this, but I always have a great sense of humor about the individual who approaches and asks for a reading, and they say, "Well, I've always been told that I couldn't be read," and so. Do we give up that secret, or do we keep that secret, John?
I'm not sure which. You're catching me off guard.
Okay. That's good. Okay. So there's over and over again, I've encountered people, and the first thing they tell me is they say, no psychic has ever been able to read me. I'm not readable. And then, of course, I give them a reading, on very, very safe material. But I think, that sometimes people are just so difficult that it's so much easier for a psychic to say, "Oh, you're just so special, I can't read you," and then that leaves their ego intact.
That's part of the problem is that those types of people aren't prepared to listen to very much in the first place. Is that the secret you were thinking of?
Yeah, they don't want. They're just too attached. And periodically, when I see it, when they tell me that, I think, well, I'm so glad they told me that, because now at least I know what to expect. So, but it is. It's a surprise on how enjoyable the work is, and I think that's one of the things that you've forgotten, is that it really is enjoyable working with people, being out in public, and just seeing the huge cross section of people, because everybody wants to talk about themselves.
Yeah, it's true.
And
yeah.
So go ahead.
Well, it goes back to this whole skepticism thing. I just it's like I have to learn it all over every morning or something. So, however much joy I get out of doing it, either alone or with you, I still, I wake up the following morning and think this was, no, there's nothing there, nothing to that.
That's great. That's kind of interesting. You know what that does is that gives you the beginner's mind. That gives you the innocence and the naivety.
There is that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a very accepting sort of place. So But I think one of the best times I had doing a reading with you was when I was working on Sunset Boulevard in that they had that little psychic room there, and people just came in one after the next, and after a while, you and I didn't even look at the people that were in front of us. We just looked at each other and talked about it. Do you see that?
Yeah.
What do you think of that? And then every now and then somebody would be like, I'm right here. but on we went. So
we certainly did.
Yeah. So
the one I remember at that Sunset place. It was she must have been mixed race because she had black hands. That is to say, very few sort of earth hands, but long lines. And there was some quality about that she really, it was a dark secret somehow. There was something about it that I don't remember if she didn't want to talk about it or, I think that was, there was something we said that made it very clear. But they were very interesting hands because they were so, African Americans have distinctive, well, in general, everything's in general because there's always exceptions. But African Americans have very distinct palms.
Yeah. And
this woman who was, she seemed to be Caucasian, but she had very distinctly African American kinds of hands. And there just seemed to be some secret associated with it that she didn't want to talk about.
That's so interesting.
Because I do remember, it's like I didn't want to bring it up in front of her. Even, in our own conversations, it's like I waited until after she was gone before I said anything to you. So that it stuck in my mind that was such a very distinct hands.
The lines are so much easier to read. The hands are so beautiful, and the story is so straightforward. When you look into their palms, you know their story. For me, I look into their palms and I feel their story. I feel their emotions and I see their story. And it's kind of a funny thing because in that situation on Sunset Boulevard, I encountered so many people, and the people that were performing or working at the House of Blues, which was 2 doors up.
Yeah, right.
There, and it was an economy thing. And so every now and then, it happened like maybe once a day, every now and then I would do a reading for a man that had been on the road way too long, and he would say, "Oh my God, I love you. You get me. Would you please tell my wife this story?" And then I would say, "You haven't been home in a while. You need to call your wife." Because it was just such an emotional sort of dialogue. But looking into their palms, it does tell a very not simple, but it does tell a very straightforward story. There's no denying it. It just is so straightforward, and it's so plain. And, there is no real misunderstanding in that process. And it's funny because I'm trying to think. I remember this person's lines, and I just remember, the one thing I do remember is her extraordinary headline. But, and there in Hollywood, you don't know. You don't know if you're talking with somebody who's, a really, I'm not really up on television, so you don't know if it's somebody who's really kind of a celebrity, because I made that mistake many times. Or if it's somebody who's come into the hotel and has come to see a client for the exchange of cash. You don't know who you have encountered, because Hollywood is an extremely wide berth in its situation. So it's interesting, but you also don't really know the destination. And I saw everything. I just, a hotel on Sunset Boulevard is just sort of like a great cross section. So let's talk about the headline lifeline disconnect and what it actually means in palmistry. You've told me that in palmistry, a headline lifeline disconnect means that an individual is born into this lifetime with past life memories of being another race, and that they bring those memories with them.
Yeah. Well, I don't know how much. Really, this was Richard Unger, who really passed this particular thing on to me, and I sort of pick up. But it does, the business of, first of all, if you believe in past lives, this is the skeptical John speaking again.
Okay.
There's that, that for those who don't believe in past lives, I mean, what are you going to do with it? But it does usually indicate somebody who was not comfortable in their family growing up. They were somehow.
So here's the short story I use. You took a look at your family of origin.
Yeah.
You loved them and you respected them, but you didn't plan on living like them, so you chose to go out that door over there and live your life entirely different from them.
Yes.
So.
Yes.
So what's the part? Yeah, they don't ever feel as if they belong to their family. The craziest part, John, is that I've sat down with families, and they all have that marking in their hand. Nobody feels like they belong to the family, and I'm like, what the heck happened here? And I'm not kidding, 3 generations. I'm going, well, gee, this doesn't make much sense. So, so Richard Unger's theory is that it's a past life memory of being another.
Well, it indicates someone who was in the past were from someplace else. Like, so now you're living with an upright Mormon family in Utah, but in a past life you were on the steppes of Asia. You were with Genghis Khan.
Right.
Something completely different.
Right.
You were living a Bedouin in Saudi Arabia. Something else. And now here you are in this situation where you're living the Wonder Bread life with a family of upright Mormons.
I love that expression.
So it's it's that kind of alienation that there's a feeling, a lifelong feeling of something's not right here. Something doesn't add up. I don't feel entirely comfortable in the situation in which I find myself growing up.
So here's
it does, it's an indicator of alienation. Interestingly, one of my in-laws has headline lifeline separation, and she is just it's just a blank wall. I suggested this to her, and I'm confident that it applies, but she was in complete denial. It's like, no, I'm just fine. I love my sisters, and everything is fine and dandy.
Right.
And she's a wonderful woman. I love her to death, but she's definitely got some conflicts that she's just not facing. And there you go. That's life like that.
So I went through a chapter. I'm not currently, because of the pandemic, I'm currently not working in public. But I went through a chapter where as many as 90% of the people that showed up to get their palms read all had the headline lifeline separation, and I mean like a big separation, John. You could lay your finger across that opening.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I thought, what is going on? I mean, really, what is going on?
So what was the context? Where were you? Where were these people coming together?
It was a party. It was just a gathering.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Not anything. Not anything specific. It's not like I can say like I did the corporate party for, the corporate Christmas party for Sony or something like that, and say, it was those people. But it was just a continuous theme that emerged again and again. And so
these people, so once again, these people, so they all had some kind of affinity. I mean, they were gathered together because they were all friends, that kind of thing? Is that what you're saying?
No, they were all. They're usually, when they're large parties, they're usually work parties. They're usually year-end corporate parties. They're, award ceremonies.
Well, I'm still, I'm looking for some kind of common thread, and I don't. So this was. I'm still trying to understand why were these people all together?
Oh, it was just a corporate party. It was just a
corporate party. All right.
Yeah,
corporate
party.
All right. So culturally.
Yes.
Culturally, these people are drawn together into some kind of corporate culture.
Wow.
That's why. That whatever, it doesn't really matter. But whatever this corporate culture is they're hiring in these alienated people for whatever whatever reason. It must work. It must there must be some, for whatever it is they're doing, that particular quality.
I would agree with you, John. Ordinarily, I would agree with you, but I'm going to tell you something that I found that 90% of these people in each one of these parties for a period of 10 years all had this headline lifeline separation. So it was not. It was like whether I went to a grad night, I went to a small gathering in Long Beach, I went to a home party. It wouldn't matter. I would encounter, as much as 90% of the group having this marking, to the point that I just about thought I was going to die of boredom giving the same sort of commentary. You looked at your family of origins. If they told you were adopted, you'd be like, God, that makes so much sense. So yeah, I just found that there was just this mass of people, and then right? That's you have told me after the simian crease, the headline lifeline separation is the rarest marking that there is. Period. No ifs, ands, or buts.
All right.
That's what
I don't remember saying that, but if you say so, okay.
Well, okay. How about in your readings when you looked at people? How many? I mean, you have a very clear memory of one. This isn't a question, like a question and answer session, but you can tell me the different times when you've seen that marking with people that one of your in-laws. They have that marking and they're in complete denial of its meaning.
Yes, it's true.
It sticks in your head. It really
sticks
in your head. You look at them. So I began to see a pattern. There was one pattern that emerged. One was that these people that had that, they chose people that were deeply bonded to their family. So so in the coupledom, the person who felt alienated from their family received a very warm and loving family. So that was their reward. And then the other person who had a really deep connection with their family received loyalty from this person who felt alienated. So I saw this sort of coupledom sort of pair up. And in fact, so much so that I would sit down with somebody and they would say, I'd say, well, is your, I'd see this marking, separation marking, and I'd say, oh, okay, where's your husband or your significant other? And they'd say, oh yeah, they'd bring him over. And I would look at the person and I would just be like, okay. And it was, it was obviously two people that were extremely different. I mean, extremely different. So, finding placement. But after a while, I came up with my own theory. It's not an accepted theory, but I encountered so much of it, I had to come up with an opinion. And, so that's still a conversation, for another time. But there we are in the land of palmistry. So tell me the one thing that you think of when you think of palmistry and how it ties to reading feet. I mean, how you as a person sort of like got that feeling, because you have a lot of the basic information of reading feet, the wide foot, the narrow foot, the shape, the fingernails, everything.
I wish you wouldn't have left me on this note. You should have warned me. I can't think of anything. I'm sorry. I'm just not...
John, all right, forget it. It's okay. That's so funny. I really am spontaneous. I really am that person who thinks of these things and goes down that road. But I do remember one conversation we had with somebody, and we looked at the heart markings in the feet, and we looked at the heart markings in the palm, and there was such a clear connection in that process. It really, really, for me, that was I mean, a lot of things tie, it's sort of like you have to learn them in order to tie them together. But the heart markings and the heart markings in the palm, they always seem to sort of, match up real effortlessly. Well, John, you've been a great conversation.
Well, thank you.
Anytime you want to have a conversation, I would love to have a conversation. You make me laugh more deeply than anybody. You get me not to take myself so seriously, and you're a really great hand reader. You really are. Very, very good. So thank you. Thank you very much for doing this with me.
You're welcome. Are we done?
We're gonna wrap it up. This is the deep reading, connecting you to your soul, and I'll be back next week. Thanks for joining us. It's been a really great conversation. John, once again, say who you are and what you do.
John Shobring, special ed teacher, also hand reader.
Okay, fabulous. Thank you very much, and we'll be back next week. Have a great day. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Become a Goldilocks Productions VIP patron. Receive exclusive access to live stream special and other epic perks. Join the Goldilocks Productions VIP community today.